On Christmas Eve, my father raised his wine glass and told me I was no longer welcome in the house I paid to keep warm. I didn't answer right away. The knife in my hand hovered over a slice of ham that had gone cold while I was trying to figure out if I'd really heard what I thought I did. For a second, I told myself he was drunk, or joking, or trying to start one of his power plays again, those passive-aggressive speeches that started like, "I just want to say something," and ended with everyone quiet and tight-lipped until the tension finally bled into dessert. But not this time. "You heard me?" he said, eyes fixed on mine across the table glass of discount red wine still raised like it was a toast. "You've stayed long enough. It's time to move out." I glanced to my right. My mother, Ellen Mitchell, kept her eyes on the plate like she hadn't heard anything at all. Her fork moved food around, but nothing made it to her mouth. Frank Mitchell, my father, didn't take his eyes off me. And Evan, my 17-year-old brother, looked like someone had just knocked the air out of his chest. His fork was frozen midair, a bite of mashed potatoes trembling as his hand shook. It wasn't that I needed a place to live. I had a job. A full-time administrative role at Silver Pine Insurance, just 15 minutes away. The salary wasn't huge, but it paid the bills. And in this house, it paid all the bills: the electricity, the internet, the water, the heating oil deliveries each November, the groceries, the medicine cabinet, the gas in Mom's car, even Dad's phone, which he used mainly to argue with his unemployed buddies about politics and complain about how lazy this generation was. I could afford an apartment. Hell, I could have moved out a year ago if I were thinking only about myself. But I stayed. I stayed because the heater nearly went out 2 winters ago. I stayed because Evan needed a stable place to finish high school. I stayed because I thought naively maybe that family meant something. Apparently it didn't. I set down my fork slowly, carefully, as if the wrong movement might make the moment worse. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice steady, too steady. Frank leaned back in his chair like he'd just landed the punch he'd been winding up for. "You're a burden," he said plainly. "This is my house, and I've decided it's time you go find your own way. Start your own life." His house. The words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to laugh. His house. I'd been covering the mortgage ever since he was laid off 3 years ago, and Mom started working part-time at the school library. The last time he paid a utility bill, I was still in college. And yet, here he was sitting in the chair I bought last summer, eating food I paid for, kicking me out like some unwanted guest. Mom still said nothing. That's what hurt more. I looked at her, searched her face for something. Disbelief, protest, shame, anything. But she just blinked slowly, took another bite of ham like she hadn't heard the whole thing. Dad Evan's voice cracked. "You can't be serious. She pays for us." Enough, Dad cut him off. "This is not your business." Evan's mouth hung open for a moment, then snapped shut. I could see his jaw tighten, his hands balling into fists under the table. I caught his eyes soft, still full of the boy I used to help with homework and sneak extra ice cream cones to when Mom was too tired to cook. The only reason I'd endured so much for so long was sitting right there across from me, terrified that I'd leave him behind. But I couldn't stay. I pushed back my chair and stood. "All right," I said quietly. No drama, no scene, no begging. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me hurt. Dad gave a tight nod, like a king accepting a vassal's surrender. "Good. It's decided." Decided. Like I hadn't spent 4 years making sure the fridge stayed stocked, the lights stayed on, the pipes didn't freeze. Like I was a squatter, not a daughter. I carried my plate to the sink, set it down gently, and turned to Evan. "I'll pack tonight," I said. "I'll be gone by morning." Claire, he started, but I gave him a look that said later. Upstairs, the familiar creak of my bedroom door felt like a goodbye. I pulled out the old gray suitcase from under my bed, the one I used back in college. I started folding clothes, jeans, sweaters, underthings. My hands moved automatically while my brain flicked through the logistics. Where to go? How to explain? Who would answer the phone on Christmas Eve? Sophie. I paused, remembering her text from earlier. Let me know if your dad starts his usual crap again. My couch is always open. I smiled for the first time that night. A soft knock pulled me back. I turned. Evan. He stood in the doorway, his hoodie zipped up to his neck, eyes glassy. You're really leaving? He asked, voice a whisper. I have to, I said. But who's going to pay for the electric, the internet? They can't. They'll figure it out, I said. Or they won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I want to go with you. I shook my head. Not yet. Finish school. Keep your head down. When you turn 18, I'll come get you. We'll make a life that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. Promise, promise. He stepped forward and hugged me tight and silent. When he left the room, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding all night. I finished packing before midnight. Downstairs, the TV buzzed low. They were watching some old holiday special like nothing had happened. I didn't bother saying goodbye. I slipped out the front door, my suitcase rattling softly against the porch steps. The wind hit my face with a freezing slap, but I didn't shiver. It was the first time in years I'd felt warm. Sophie's apartment was a 10-minute drive across town. I texted her from the parking lot. Is that offer still open? Her reply came instantly, always. Front door's unlocked. I'll make cocoa. She didn't ask why, didn't need to. That night I slept on a couch with a scratchy blanket and one soft pillow. And still it was the most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. The next morning, while the world unwrapped gifts under blinking lights, I sat at Sophie's kitchen table, logged into the utility accounts, and began removing my name from everything. No more autopay, no more shared accounts, no more Mom's Amazon Prime purchases on my card. Just silence, a clean cut. They'd kicked me out like I was disposable. So I left them what they gave me, nothing. And for the first time in years, I did something for myself. No guilt, no apology, just forward. I didn't scream, didn't slam a door. I just logged into every bill I'd been paying and clicked remove. No big speeches, no emotional exit music, just the quiet tapping of fingers on keys as I reclaimed every corner of my life they had come to believe belonged to them. It was the morning after Christmas. Sophie had made coffee, the good kind she saved for weekends and heartbreaks. I sipped it slowly at her tiny kitchen table, the sunlight cutting soft lines across her faded checkered curtains. The heat hummed steadily through the vents. A place that didn't expect me to earn my right to be warm. I opened my laptop. One tab after another. The electric company remove autopay. The internet bill cancel, linked account. My name was still listed on everything. They hadn't noticed. Or maybe they just assumed I'd never really leave. That even if my body left the house, my money would stay behind to do the thankless work it always had. Click, click, click. Netflix. Hulu. The Amazon Prime account my mother used for nightly dramas. The grocery delivery service tied to my debit card. All gone. No farewell message. No final warning. Because my presence had been the warning. 4 years of shouldering their bills was the clearest message I could have given, and they'd ignored it. I stared at the screen as the final confirmation email arrived. You have successfully removed your payment method. Done. Sophie returned from her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, just ending some habits. She didn't press. That's what I appreciated about her most. She offered space without needing an explanation. Around noon, I stretched out on the couch and tried to read. But my phone buzzed. A string of missed calls. 1 from my mother, 3 from my dad, and a single text from Evan. Power's been shut off. Dad's losing it. Says something about hacking your bank stuff. Be careful. I sat up straighter. My chest tightened, but not from panic, just recognition. like watching a storm approach that you'd seen on the radar days earlier. Another buzz, a new email. Alert. Suspicious login attempt on your account from an unrecognized device. I stared at the screen. Then again, another failed password entry. Attempted recovery initiated. He wasn't just angry, he was trying to get in. I called Evan immediately. "Hey," he whispered. I could hear the tension in his voice even before he spoke. "Tell me," I said. I saw him with Mom's old notebook. The one with all the scribbled passwords. He's pacing around swearing under his breath. Keeps muttering about how she owes us that money. I clenched my jaw. "Thanks for telling me." "You okay?" he asked, voice smaller now. "I mean, this is messed up." "I'm fine," I said, "but I'm going to fix it." That evening, I locked myself in Sophie's guest room and got to work. First, I called the bank, told them about the unauthorized attempts flagged my accounts, and had them freeze login access for 48 hours. I activated two-factor authentication on every financial app, changed every password to something long random and impossible to guess. I even linked each login to biometric access, Face ID, fingerprint, and backup code sent to a number only I controlled. When I was done, I felt something I hadn't in years: ownership. Not of a house, not of furniture, but of my own damn life. The next morning, the real silence began. No power in their house. No heat. No Wi-Fi. No online TV. No grocery delivery. No one had ever explained to them that financial support wasn't owed. That daughters who work full-time don't come with a lifetime subscription to unpaid servitude. Around 11 a.m., my phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail. Then another buzz, this time from Mom. "Joanna, what's going on?" "The internet's down. TV won't turn on. Your dad's furious." "Did you forget to pay something?" I stared at the message for a long time, then set the phone face down on the table. Not answering wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. That evening, while Sophie chopped vegetables for soup, the phone rang again. I almost ignored it, but instinct told me to listen. "Claire?" My mother's voice cracked through the speaker. "I don't know what's happening. The house is freezing. Nothing's working. We thought maybe it was a power outage, but our neighbors' lights are on." "Because their bills are paid," I said evenly. A pause. "Your father's, he's not himself. He's blaming you. Says you're punishing us." "I didn't punish anyone," I said quietly. "I just turned off the things I was paying for." More silence. "Then your father thought you'd still help. That you were just being dramatic last night." I let out a breath. "He kicked me out, Mom. On Christmas Eve. After I carried this house on my back for years. And you said nothing." Her voice trembled. I didn't know what to say. "You know how he gets." "I know," I said. "That's why I left." I hung up before she could reply. 3 hours later, a new email arrived. "Alert. Unsuccessful attempt to reset your password." I sat there numb, staring at the screen. Then another message. From Evan. "He tried your laptop. The one you left on the top shelf. It's gone." I stood, walked to the window. The streets were quiet snow just starting to fall. But in my chest, something was burning cold and clean. I turned back to the couch, opened my laptop again, and filed a theft report. The device's GPS had been enabled. If it was turned on, it would ping a location. I also removed it from all sync accounts, locked it remotely. A final goodbye. That night I received one last message from my dad. "You think you're better than us now? You'll regret walking away from your family. This is war." I stared at those words. This is war. No, I thought, this is peace. Because war is what I'd lived through quietly for 4 years, supporting people who used my silence as a license to demand more. Peace is what I was choosing now. Not with fists or shouting, but with boundaries, with locks on my money, with the power to say no more. The next day, I opened a new account at a credit union Dad didn't know existed. Changed my direct deposit info, replaced my debit card, got a new P.O. box under my name only. One step at a time, I erased the fingerprints they'd left on my life. On the third day, the bank alerted me to another attempted login, this time with a spoofed email pretending to be mine. They blocked it immediately. I thanked them, and I smiled. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted to own me even after pushing me out. But you don't get to lock the doors and still expect your lights to stay on. That night, Sophie and I sat on her couch, the TV flickering between holiday reruns. She handed me a blanket and a bowl of soup. "You're quiet," she said. "Not angry," I replied. "Just done." She nodded. Sometimes silence is louder than yelling. I leaned back, watching the fake snow on the screen. "Let them feel it," I said. Sophie glanced at me. The silent "no," I said. The absence. And in that moment, I knew I hadn't just left a house. I'd left behind a version of myself that believed endurance was love. On the third night after I cut them off, I heard pounding on the apartment door. It wasn't a knock. It was a threat dressed in urgency, 3 thuds, heavy and spaced like a judge sentencing guilt before the trial even starts. Sophie looked at me, eyes wide, frozen, mid-step in the hallway. Her hand clutched the towel from her wet hair, but all the warmth had drained from her face. "I think it's him," she whispered. I didn't need her to say the name. I already knew. I crept toward the peephole. My hands trembled not from fear, but recognition. That shadow on the other side of the door had haunted me for years, even while I lived under his roof. My father stood there, fists balled at his sides, jaw clenched like he was chewing on a grudge too big to swallow. His eyes darted around the hallway, then fixed on the door again. "Claire," his voice cut through the cheap insulation like broken glass. "You think you can just walk away?" Sophie backed into the kitchen and mouthed silently, "Call the police." I already had, but I didn't move. I stood there, one hand still hovering over the deadbolt, my heart banging even louder than he was. I thought I'd prepared myself for this. I thought passwords and distance and silence were enough. But I hadn't expected him to come to me. Not like this. He hit the door again. "After everything we gave you," he growled, "you do this to us. You're nothing without this family." That line. That old dusty line he'd used every time he wanted to guilt me into submission. I didn't respond. I didn't even blink. 3 minutes later, the red-blue glow of police lights flashed outside. When the officer gently knocked, I opened the door without a word. My father turned, his face collapsing into something grotesque caught between fury and disbelief. "She's my daughter," he snarled. "I have a right to talk to her." "Sir, step back," the officer said firmly. "She doesn't want contact. You're here without invitation. That's trespassing." He looked at me, expecting me to say something. To save him. To flinch. I didn't move. Not even a twitch. The officer continued. "You'll be escorted off the property. If you return again, it becomes criminal." My father hesitated. His chest heaved. Then he leaned forward, pointed a finger in my face, and said, "You'll regret this, Claire. You don't turn your back on family without consequences." I finally spoke, quietly, calmly. "You turned your back on me at Christmas, remember?" That silenced him. The officers took his arm, not roughly but with finality. As they led him away, his eyes never left mine. But they held something new this time. Not control. Not righteousness. Just fear of a daughter who no longer bowed her head. When the door closed behind them, Sophie exhaled hard and pulled me into a hug. "I thought he might break the door," she whispered. I shook my head slowly. He already did. Years ago. The next morning, I filed a formal police report and included the text messages I'd received from an unknown number the night before. "You think this is over? You're not done with us." I knew it was him. No signature needed. He couldn't stand that I'd walked away on my own terms. But now he was crossing lines. I spent the next few days locking everything down. Every bank account had a new password, 2-step verification across the board. I set up alerts for logins from any new device. I bought a new phone, changed the number. Sophie helped me install a camera on the apartment door and a motion alert sensor near the mailbox. I was no longer surviving. I was protecting. But the real trigger came on a cold Tuesday morning. I got a call from the credit union. My joint account, long unused but still active, had triggered a fraud warning. Someone attempted to access it 3 times in a row. "Would you like us to freeze it entirely?" the woman on the phone asked. "Yes," I said immediately. "Would you like to open a new account in its place?" "No, I'm done with joint anything." That afternoon I called Evan. I needed to hear a voice that wasn't manipulating or controlling. He answered on the first ring. "Claire." His voice was a whisper. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, though my voice cracked. Dad came to Sophie's. Police took him away. Evan cursed under his breath. "He's losing it. Completely unhinged. Are you safe?" "I'm keeping my head down. But you need to know he's blaming everything on you. The power outages, the unpaid bills, even the Wi-Fi." I laughed bitter. "Did he forget I used to pay for all of it?" Evan didn't laugh. "They're pretending like you were never helping. That you were always a burden. It's like they've rewritten history overnight." I closed my eyes. It wasn't just gaslighting. It was erasure. "Be careful," I told him. "I'm working on the legal side of things now. If he tries anything again, there will be consequences." He already did. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Evan paused. "He tried to get into your old room, the one you locked. He said he was looking for financial documents. Mom gave him your old notebooks." "Of course she did." "He's digging," Evan continued. "Not because he wants closure, because he wants control." That night I sat in front of my laptop for hours. I reviewed every system I'd ever set up for them online. Grocery delivery accounts, the Amazon Prime tied to my card, the autopay for the heating bill. Every account had my fingerprints, my generosity, and they'd weaponized it. Or worse, never even noticed. I started dismantling the rest. Click, internet service canceled. Click, gas and electric autopay removed. Click, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify all logged out. Click, the secondary credit card I'd issued in Mom's name revoked. One by one, I erased the digital trail of my care. No messages, no warnings, just silence. By the next morning, I had 10 missed calls and 4 voicemails. The first 2 were from Mom. "Claire, something's wrong with the internet. Your father can't watch TV. The lights are flickering." The third voicemail was quieter. "Claire, we don't know how to fix this. Please call back." The last voicemail came from Evan. They're blaming each other now. Dad's yelling. Mom's crying. The house is freezing. I told them you'd stopped paying. You should have seen their faces. I felt nothing. No guilt, no vengeance, just stillness. Because that wasn't revenge. That was the cost of entitlement. And for the first time, they were footing the bill. A few nights later, I got a text from Evan. "He's trying your accounts again. Mom's notebook is gone. He's desperate." Desperate was dangerous. I forwarded every attempted login alert to the police and called the same officer who had escorted him from Sophie's apartment. He remembered me. "If he shows up again," he said, "we'll be ready." "I'll be ready too," I replied. Because this time, I wasn't just the quiet daughter in the hallway, hoping for peace. I was the woman he'd taught not to scream, so she could cut deeper in silence. And I had. I didn't expect the knock. Not at 9:47 p.m., not on a Tuesday, not after days of silence so thick it felt like I'd been dropped into a vacuum. The apartment had been quiet. Sophie was working the late shift, and I'd just finished folding laundry, small domestic rituals that gave structure to days still ringing with the echo of my father's words. But that knock wasn't casual. It wasn't polite. It was hard. Measured. Like whoever was behind it wasn't hoping I'd answer, but certain I would. I froze. From the crack beneath the door I saw shoes. Men's boots. Mud on the soles. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just listened. Another knock, firmer. Claire, a voice I hadn't heard in days. My mother's. I exhaled slowly, pressing my back against the wall next to the door. I didn't respond. She hadn't come to hug me goodbye when I left. Hadn't said a word when I packed my life into a single suitcase. And now suddenly, here she was, outside the apartment I hadn't shared with anyone but Sophie. In silence. She knocked once more, then dropped something to the floor. I heard the soft rustle of paper sliding under the door. Then footsteps. Fading. Only after the hallway returned to stillness did I reach for the envelope. My name written in ink. No return address. I didn't open it. Not yet. I left it on the counter and stared at it. While I boiled water for tea, the way you might stare at something poisonous, curious but unwilling to touch. When I finally slid it open, the handwriting inside looked like hers. Slanted and cautious. Claire, I don't know what happened to us. Your father's been so angry. The bills are piling up. The internet is gone. Evan won't talk to anyone. He keeps asking why you're gone. I don't know what to say to him anymore. Please just come home, or call, or write. We're not okay. There was no apology, no ownership. Just desperation dressed up as concern. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and dropped it into the trash. Let them feel it. Let the silence echo through the house, like I had for years, when they forgot to thank me, to notice me, to protect me. The next morning, Sophie noticed something off. I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. I was still. Settled in a way that startled even me. I think they're starting to realize I told her. Realize what? That I'm gone. Not just physically, but really gone. From their grip, from their control. She nodded but didn't press. She knew better. Knew that when you grow up walking on eggshells, silence is sometimes louder than a scream. Later that day, my phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Evan. Dad's been trying to get into your laptop. I told him to stop. He got mad. Punched the wall. I stared at the screen. Evan had always been the one to absorb the overflow, my father's rage, my mother's excuses. He didn't deserve it. Not him. I called him immediately. He answered on the first ring. Hey, he said quietly. You okay? A pause. Not really. He's losing it. Keeps talking about how you owe the family. Mom just keeps crying. I don't know what to do. You don't have to do anything I said. Just hold on. I'm working on something. Trust me. And I was. That afternoon, I walked into a local branch of my bank, not the one where I used to go with my mother to deposit grocery rebates or pay for the electric bill. A different one. One with no memory of me attached to them. I sat across from the branch manager with a calm I hadn't felt since December 24th. I need to set up a full security audit on my accounts, I said, including any cards that were linked to shared utilities. And I want to file a report. Attempted unauthorized access. She blinked. Do you know who it was? I nodded. My father. He doesn't have access anymore, but he's trying, and I want the trail to show it. The woman leaned forward, her expression firm. We can help with that. I left with a folder of paperwork, 2 new security tokens, and a copy of the login attempts flagged from my hometown IP address. I also left with something more important proof. That night, while sipping tea and watching the snow dust the window ledge, I opened my laptop and wrote one more document. This one not financial, but legal. A cease and desist letter. No threats, no insults, just clean language and clear intent. It began with, to Mr. Frank Mitchell and Mrs. Ellen Mitchell. As of January 3rd, I am no longer associated with your financial or legal responsibilities. I didn't sign it with love. I didn't sign it with anything but my full name. Claire Mitchell, the girl they thought was a burden. The girl they never realized was holding the roof up. By Friday, the silence had turned into noise. Evan messaged again. The gas got cut today. Dad's losing it. Mom keeps saying you ruined Christmas. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I didn't ruin anything. I simply left. I left the way people do when they've been forced into corners too many times. Quietly. Thoroughly. Without turning back. But they weren't done. Sunday evening, the landline at Sophie's place rang. She picked up thinking it was her mom. Her voice went stiff. "It's your dad," she mouthed. I shook my head. She hung up. Less than 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the building entrance. Not hard like the last time. This one was different. Measured, expectant. We didn't open the door. But we watched through the peephole. Frank Mitchell stood there, wearing his old work coat, unshaven, eyes scanning the hallway like a man searching for a ghost. He waited 5 minutes, then left. The next morning, Sophie found a folded note slipped through the mailbox slot. "You don't get to disappear like this. This family raised you. You'll regret turning your back on us." I showed it to the police, filed a formal harassment warning, updated the civil boundary notification I'd quietly started weeks ago, just in case. They hadn't just pushed me out. They were now trying to reel me back in. Not out of love, but because I had become inconvenient in my absence. By Friday, Evan sent a final message. "They're talking about selling the house. No money left. No idea how to keep the lights on. They're blaming you, of course." I replied simply, "You okay?" He wrote back, "I'm okay because of you. I'll hold on a bit longer. But the house, it's falling apart without you." I smiled, not out of cruelty, but out of confirmation. Because some silences aren't empty. Some silences are the sound of truth finally being heard. You would think the story ends when the locks are changed and the silence settles in. When the bills stop auto-paying and the lights flicker off in the house you once kept warm. But endings are rarely that neat. Mine came in pieces. Not with a scream, not even a final goodbye. Just a knock on a door I never answered. It started with Evan's 18th birthday. I had circled the date months before, back when I was still at Sophie's, sitting cross-legged on her living room floor, mapping out the days like they were chess moves. March 19th. The day my brother became legally untethered from the people who had taught us that love was conditional and that gratitude was something we owed but never received. The night before, he texted me, "I'm ready." Just that. 2 words that said everything. I drove back to the old neighborhood before sunrise. The streets looked smaller, somehow more brittle. The house we grew up in was still there, but the yard had overgrown. The porch light was broken. It didn't look like a home anymore. Just a structure clinging to something long gone. Evan was waiting outside with a single backpack. A black one I'd bought him when he started high school. He had his hood-up headphones dangling from his collar. And that same quiet in his eyes, the one I used to see in the mirror every day. "You good?" I asked as he tossed the bag into my trunk. He nodded. I left a note. Didn't want to fight. "You don't owe them anything." "I know," he said. But he was still shaking as he got in the car. We didn't say much on the drive. Just music and the kind of silence that doesn't weigh you down, but holds you gently. That afternoon, we checked him into the dorms at the community college. I helped him set up his bedding, unpack his books, stock the mini fridge. It wasn't much, but it was his. Clean, private, safe. Before I left, I paused at the doorway and looked back at him. "You're not alone anymore," I said. He smiled. "I never was. You just had to remind me." I didn't cry. Not until I got to the car. And even then, it wasn't grief, it was release. But like I said, endings don't come all at once. 3 weeks later, I received a certified letter at my new address. Nora had helped me lease a small studio apartment, nothing fancy, but it had a working heater, thick curtains, and enough quiet to sleep through the night without waking to shouting or guilt. The letter was from my father, or rather his attorney. He was suing me for family abandonment and financial harm. Said I had caused unnecessary hardship by withdrawing support and emotionally manipulated my younger brother into leaving home. I read the words once, then laughed out loud in the middle of my kitchen. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. They weren't just broken. They were clinging to a narrative where I was the villain, because that was easier than facing the truth. I forwarded the letter to my attorney, Nora's cousin. A woman named Jenna, with a sharp mind and a sharper spine. He doesn't have a case, she said, but we'll respond anyway. Just to make it clear, our response was simple: a full accounting of every bill I'd paid, every unauthorized login attempt traced to his IP, every text message, every attempt at intimidation, and then we filed a protective order. He tried to make me the bad guy in a story he wrote himself, but I wasn't playing that role anymore. The silence that followed was the final crack. It didn't break me. It broke them. 2 months passed, then 3. One morning I stopped by the post office and found a single envelope in my box. No name, just the words, "Forgive us." Inside were 2 things: a photo of our family from 10 years ago and a hand-scrawled note from my mother. Not an apology. Not really. Just a list. The house is gone. Your father's drinking again. We lost everything. I don't know how to fix this. I hope you're safe. Tell Evan I miss him. No return address. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already closed that door. But Evan read it. I showed it to him one weekend when we met for coffee near his campus. He stared at the note, then handed it back to me. "Do you think she means it?" he asked. "I think she regrets the consequences, not the choices." He nodded slowly. "That's not the same." "No," I said, "it's not. That day we walked along the riverbank just like we used to when I was still in college. And he was just a kid tagging along. Except this time we weren't returning home to guilt and silence. We were going back to our own lives, separate but stronger. And I realized something. The final door wasn't the one I walked out of. It was the one I refused to re-enter. There was power in that. Freedom. It took being pushed out on Christmas Eve to understand what it meant to claim my own life. It took years of being used, ignored, and silenced to find the voice I had buried under obligation and shame. Now I speak quietly, but I speak for myself. Now I walk alone, but I walk where I choose. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't owe anyone your loyalty if the cost is your dignity. You don't owe anyone your silence when they confuse your kindness for weakness. And you certainly don't owe anyone a return to the fire they threw you into just because they've grown cold without you. I didn't get revenge. I got peace. And sometimes that's the loudest victory of all. Claire Mitchell's story isn't just about walking away from a toxic family. It's about reclaiming personal worth and choosing dignity over blind loyalty. She didn't shout, didn't seek revenge through chaos. Instead, she quietly withdrew the value she had brought for years and let the silence speak for itself. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Claire's calm strength reminds us that you don't have to stay in places where you're only seen as useful, not valued. You are not heartless for choosing peace over pain. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. This story is a wake-up call for anyone who has ever been taken for granted. Your absence can teach lessons your presence never could. If this story moved you, reflect on what it means to be truly free. And remember, freedom begins the moment you stop asking permission to protect your own peace.